You'll have to get your oven mitts out for this one because you're in for one spicy movie. PANMAN is a demonic serial killer who wears a pan on his head and hits his enemies with another one. Wait a second, this is a pot, not a pan, and this isn't even a pan either. I'm not sure if the people who made this movie don't know the difference between a pot and a pan, or they just didn't want to call him Potman because it might sound like a drug dealer. The movie starts off with these two girls discussing their marks on the poached salmon exam until suddenly they get jumped by this creepy guy hiding out in the dark. He grabs one of their purses and says,
"Finders keepers, lady."
Then he just bumps into PANMAN, looks up, and says, "What are you supposed to be?" The creepy guy starts to run away, and then PANMAN lifts up his hand and flings his pot crazy far into the guy's back. However, things will start to get very weird very quickly, even though they've been pretty weird so far.
Oh my god. I can't believe you just did that. Wow, PANMAN, you're real.
She instantly falls in love with him. Oh, PANMAN, your shiny head is so wonderful and clean. PANMAN then just starts to imagine himself with this girl, going on the beach on a romantic date while still wearing the pot on his head, and then buying and moving into a house with her. A switch just flips in his mind and the music shifts to the screechy horror while he thinks about her getting mad at him and throwing all of his stuff out of the house. It snaps back to reality, he just looks at her and then clobbers her with a pan. He then tracks down her friend and the scene ends with her just screeching at the top of her lungs. This was not edited at all. She basically sounds like a wolf. After the opening credits, we're brought to a university, but this university isn't like anything I've ever seen. All the kids in the class are acting like bored high school students. They're passing notes, they're making really rude comments to each other in the middle of class. This also doesn't make any sense because all of these kids look like they're in their 30s. There's even a school bully who thinks he's too cool for school and just insults everyone and leaves the room.
See you losers later. Yeah, peace. Don't ask me for any money when I'm rich.
After his dramatic exit, we cut to a parking lot where he's sitting in his car with his girlfriend Hope. And then when she's about to leave the car, PANMAN suddenly comes out of nowhere and then hands her a note that says, "Do you like me?" This is the weirdest, cringiest thing that you can do. And it's inside of a movie. There's even little checkboxes that say yes, no, and maybe. Maybe? You mean you're gonna say maybe to this dessert of a man, PANMAN? The bully comes in and tries to save his girlfriend, but PANMAN knows the art of confusion. He winds up his arm for several seconds and then completely doesn't use it and lops off the bully's head with the pot in his other hand. The girl is just completely frightened and runs away, and then PANMAN eventually catches up to her. He then lifts up his hand and it looks like he's gonna kill her, but then he just takes out something from his sleeve and it's a note. It just says "call me" and it has his number on it with a little exclamation mark with a heart on the bottom. This is the sappiest, stupidest thing I've ever seen, man. Also, PANMAN has the funniest walk ever. He just stands up and goes. PANMAN then just lets her go, and she just books it out of the parking lot. After a few blocks, she runs into this guy who looks like a park ranger, but he's actually a PI.
Who the heck are you?
Someone who can help.
How do you know my name?
I know lots of things, especially about the PANMAN and cooking.
He's been tracking PANMAN for a while, and he has a brilliant idea to be able to use Hope, this girl who is traumatized already, as bait to be able to go and help him. For some reason, Hope just instantly agrees and decides to call him up to be able to ask him out on a date. Also, to make the scenes and dialogue more dramatic, they end up pumping up the music so you can hardly hear anything. They do this several times throughout the movie, and it's almost like they're covering up how terrible it is.
If you want to help catch this killer, you gotta get close to him. And do anything he says. And get him to fall in love with you.
I'll try.
The movie then just randomly has this culinary student running up the stairs with his books in his hand, and then PANMAN just puts out his leg and trips him. This guy has the worst acting I've ever seen in the entire movie, and that's saying something. This acting is so terribly bad that it's so funny.
Oh my god, PANMAN, please don't hurt me. Please don't kill me or hurt me.
PANMAN then gets a phone call from Hope when he's in the middle of terrorizing this guy. I guess PANMAN's a strong and silent type because he doesn't say a word throughout this entire thing. He just puts the phone next to the pot on his head, and for some reason he can understand everything she's saying, but then also he nods his head up and down and she can understand everything he's saying too. Such a weird conversation, and during this entire thing he's just stepping on this guy's leg and he's screaming out in pain, but he's screaming out in just the weirdest ways possible.
This is Hope from the other night.
Pan-Man is overjoyed that he's able to have a date with Hope, and he just lets the guy go. Instead of running away, he just goes up to Pan-Man and just gives him a giant hug. Not something I would do to somebody who was previously trying to break my leg.
Oh, thank you. Oh my god, thank you, Pan-Man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Pan-Man is super jazzed for the date as he comes to Hope's door with flowers in hand and doing the craziest dance moves I've ever seen. And then a date montage happens where Pan-Man and Hope go to the beach and they're having the best time of their lives. He's telling stories, they're laughing, it looks like she's actually falling for him. And then this one random guy starts checking out Hope, so Pan-Man runs on over and about to pummel him. Hope motions Pan-Man back so he won't hurt the guy, but then she gets distracted by this random sea lion lying on the side of the beach. Hope just gets mesmerized by the sea lion and doesn't realize that just a few feet away, Pan-Man is just beating the crap out of this guy. The best part is there's this happy-go-lucky music playing in the background that completely contradicts what's actually going on in the scene. After the beautiful date, she asks if she can see what's underneath of his pan, but he's just not ready yet. And yes, she called the pan, even though she's a culinary student and she should know that that's a pot and not a pan. Hope and Pan-Man start to get really close, especially because Pan-Man brought her an amazing gift.
A big mouth Billy Bass? Oh my gosh!
Yes, that's right, a talking wall bass. The most romantic gift that you can ever get your partner ever. Pan-Man and Hope are starting to get serious. It's actually so serious that Hope realizes it's a pot and not a pan.
Come on. Take the pot off your head.
She wants him to be able to go take off his pot and see his actual face. And now for the big reveal. He pulls off his pot and it's none other than Jeremy. What, you don't know who Jeremy is? I don't know either. I had to look back and figure out who this Jeremy guy was. He was some random guy that was sitting at the back of the class that passed Hope a pencil for like 3 seconds in the beginning of the movie. Why is Jeremy relevant? How is Jeremy relevant to this entire story? Jeremy, Pan-Man, whatever his name is, finally gets his kiss with Hope. He's finally able to talk a little bit, but then it starts going to montages again. This movie loves its montages. It's really inconsistent because he's still hanging out with a pot on his head, but other times he's kissing Hope in public and doesn't care about his identity, so I have no idea. We soon realize that the private detective and the culinary professor are in cahoots. The PI starts to get some reservations about using Hope as bait, but the professor is able to ease his concerns with these cheesy words.
Hope is our only hope. Most convenient, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like they're not really concerned about Hope's well-being. The PI even calls Hope, even though he knows that the Pan-Man is coming right over. The Pan-Man hears some of their conversation and he feels totally betrayed. He finds a big spoon, he finds a whisk, he even finds a knife and starts stabbing the air. And then he realizes, wait a second, none of these things are pots. So what does he do? He goes and grabs some aluminum foil. Not the actual foil, but the little thing that like cuts the aluminum foil for you. Those little tiny sharp edges on the side of the aluminum foil container. It's really hard to be able to cut things properly with that, but he decides to use that and he goes down on her and spends a long time just going back and forth, tearing her neck apart with that aluminum foil container. After he's done, he puts his head against the wall and he feels absolutely awful about what he's done, but he has to leave because he knows that people are coming to go and find him. I can't believe all of that happened just so suddenly, but you know what that means? That's right, this time it's an extremely long montage that lasts minutes. Pan-Man feels extremely sorry about everything. He goes and reflects. He owns his fighting skills in his backyard where nobody else can see him. And he does this crazy jump kick, which admittedly is actually kind of cool. And then we see this PI over and over again just painting these pots on these canvases. And then he also just paints Pan-Man as well. Apparently he's doing research or something, but I'm not 100% sure what that research is. All this type of stuff leads me to believe that something epic is going to happen. These two are going to battle it out, and there's going to be one victor. Who's it going to be? Pan-Man or PI guy? But no, what actually happens is PI guy comes downstairs and takes a look at Pan-Man. He's like, hey, I gotta tell you something. And then Pan-Man just hits him with his pan and blood goes everywhere. This isn't regular blood. This is lumpy blood going down the side of the wall. It is really, really weird. You think everything is wrapped up. Pan-Man has become victorious. He is a winner. This is one of those sad instances where the serial killer is won. But you are wrong. But this movie is far from over. We immediately get transported to Hope's funeral, and the first thing that we see is someone cutting a cake with Hope's face on it. They cut directly on the neck. That's kind of on the nose, isn't it? Or should I say, on the neck.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
The guy who stands up in front is a priest, I guess, but also part of the culinary world, so I don't know where exactly he fits in. But anyways, he's serving this cake to everybody and doing the most boring sermon of all time. We find out that Hope's last name is To Live. Hope to Live, that's her name. And she is dead. All hope is dead. Partway through the funeral, the professor and his culinary gang roll in, and they try to look like they're the coolest people ever, except for this guy who looks like he's bored out of his skull. The priest goes on for ages and ages, and then subjects us to his terrible singing voice.
Amazing grace, I once was lost.
He's just about to leave, and then somebody asks, aren't we supposed to spread the ashes? And he just says, I already did. Hope's ashes are in all of you. I have baked the ashes into the cake. What a sadistic thing to do. Everyone just starts throwing up, and some other people start throwing up on each other. It's just really, really gross. He then turns to everyone and says,
Oh, eat it, sons of...
Why does he hate everyone? There's no context at all. It doesn't make any sense. This guy always cracks me up. He doesn't care that the food has all these ashes in it. He's just going to eat and enjoy. He's just going to eat all that cake. Once the funeral starts wrapping up, Hope's sister goes over to the professor and is going to ask them how they knew Hope and if they could help her figure out what's going on. Initially, they deny any involvement and say that they can't do anything, but then Cake Guy steps in to save the day.
Justice,
Yeah?
we possibly might be able to help you after all. Come with us.
The professor's completely against her, knowing any part of the investigation, but then Cake Man says that the girl and the team both need to get Hope back. The professor's confused because Hope is already dead, but then Cake Man comes up with this amazing line.
I don't mean hope like in the person sense of the word. I mean hope like in the Obama sense of the word.
She finally gets to meet all these people, and they're just stereotypes. This one girl only complains about everything and thinks she's the smartest person in the room.
So you're some kind of big thinker, are you? She probably thinks she's Socrates' granddaughter or something.
Then there's this giant guy who has muscles on his muscles. Every time you see him, he's either doing curls, or he's doing crunches, or he's doing some sort of exercise except for legs. I've never seen this guy do legs. Maybe that's one thing that he's neglecting? The professor finally gives Justice some information on what's going on.
She was killed by... a demon.
What?
He goes on to explain that the demon's name is Dolodroff, and he went crazy on one of his employees. Instead of just breaking up the fight, the other chefs, for some reason, decided to get out their knives, meat tenderizers, and whatever else that they could get their hands on and beat him to death. The scene goes on for a while, and it's pretty brutal. Somehow, through his death, he became a demon, and his soul left his body and went into Jeremy's. After that fateful night, the professor dedicated his life to be able to go and track down PANMAN and figure out everything he could find out about him. And you know how he did that? This time it's not a montage, it's through the power of the internet.
I also run a website called whoispanman.com. It's a database of Panman sightings, blogs, pictures, and video footage. Most people don't believe he really exists.
The professor then says that he almost tracked down Dolodroff and almost killed him. He had him cornered, but then the demon just left the body. When the demon leaves the guy's body, his first thought is this.
Did you grade our final exams yet?
The professor is completely crazy. He knew that the demon ran off already, but then he goes up to this kid and then just goes and stabs him right in the stomach. Like, what the heck is going on? I guess he just wanted to be safe and kill any remnants of evil, but that's insane.
I've got you now, Dolodroff.
Who's dizzy dry?
But I knew better than to believe a shifty demon.
The professor is actually kind of unhinged. Throughout this movie, it looks like he's trying to find any excuse to be able to go and hurt others. He even kidnaps his own culinary students for information, and the look on his face makes it seem like he's having the time of his life.
You better tell me, or this is going to get very ugly.
The scene is also really weird because this girl is enjoying this guy getting tortured.
Now, even if we do get out alive, your face will be scarred up forever. Or he could break your fingers or knock your teeth out.
She also sounds super excited about everything the professor is doing, and it's really annoying.
He's got the pizza slicer instead of the roller.
On the other side of town, PANMAN was able to track down Justice and ambushes her inside of her kitchen. He picks her up by the throat, about to kill her, but then suddenly he sees Hope. He thinks that Justice is Hope, even though they don't really look that similar, and Hope is still dead. PANMAN, confused and nervous, just flees the scene. It's time for the gang to hatch a plan, and to deal with PANMAN once and for all. Apparently, PANMAN has an Achilles heel. In his previous life, he was severely allergic to pesto. He even created a restaurant to show his hatred of pesto to the world.
When the brilliant chef Dolodroff was alive,
he was allergic to it. He even named his old restaurant the Antipesto.
They decide to lure Panman to this restaurant with a sign outside that says he has a reserved table for one. When the waiter comes out to help him, he refers to Panman as Dolodroff. Everyone is so on edge and is already so sketchy that it's super obvious it's a setup. They even serve him bread with a side of pesto. They don't even try to hide it. Panman realizes something is up and takes the waiter hostage. Everyone is frozen and has no idea what to do, and then the professor just grabs a knife and then flings it at Panman's head. The sound effect of the knife hitting the pot is hilarious. Panman is frustrated and starts hitting the waiter in the head with his pan over and over again. He takes one look at Justice and then books it out of the restaurant. The waiter dies and the gang is in shock. Everyone blames the professor for being so reckless, and at the meeting they just get up and leave.
There's some that think it was you that got him killed. Was never gonna cut his head off.
This guy's the most chill in the entire group. He tries to get angry, but then he also says, "See you later in custom class."
This obsession's got you blinded. Goodbye, Professor. I'll see you in custody class.
Even though all of the professor's faithful followers have abandoned him, Justice is still there. Despite all of the bad things the professor has done, Justice just does not care. Panman is pissed, and he's out for vengeance. His first stop is a nice guy's house. He plugs in a waffle iron and just waits in the corner. He must have a sixth sense because he knows when he startles a guy, he's gonna put his hand on the waffle iron and just burn himself. See, even the guy in the movie is confused about this. Panman impales him and then just dumps his blood all over him. This looks nothing like blood. The guy's last dying words are...
That was rude.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Next stop is an annoying, egotistical girl. Her sink is filling up with boiling hot water and she notices that Panman is there. She tackles him, but then he grabs some soap and squirts it into her mouth. She also has no idea how to fight as she keeps hitting him in the pot. You can even see the blood from her hands go all over it. The scene is so awkward because she opens her mouth for the longest time trying to make sure that Panman gets all the soap he can in there. She then gets drowned in the boiling sink water. I guess for all the trash talk she's done, it's fitting that she gets her mouth rinsed out with soap. His last stop is good old Muscle Dude. This time, Panman is polite and rings the doorbell. Muscle Dude opens the door and they have an epic battle where they smash everything inside the house. Eventually, Muscle Dude gets the upper hand and throws him out of the window. You think that you can get rid of Panman that easily? Think again. Panman rings the doorbell again, and this time he's armed with a corkscrew. He shoves that corkscrew right into the guy's face and takes out his eye. I'm not going to show the eye taken out, but it is pretty graphic. After he knocks him on the back of his head with his pot. While all of this is happening, Justice and the Professor are coming up with a new plan that'll pump Panman so full of pesto that he won't know what to do. Justice pretends to be Hope and asks Panman to come over for a meal. She also understands his head nods from the other side of the phone, so I guess she and Hope aren't so different after all. When Panman gets to Hope's place, Justice is laying there with fake blood, pretending to be dead. Panman freaks out, but then Justice gets up, picks up some food for them, and heads upstairs. This is the most unappetizing romantic meal I've ever seen. It's just uncooked vegetables and chicken breasts. When Panman cuts open the chicken, we're told that there's pesto in there. Again, it uses this weird green arrow. These are not my edits. They keep using this arrow to show us where pesto is. What's really weird is that Panman doesn't realize after the first bite that there's pesto inside, and so he takes a few more bites before he starts actually getting affected. Panman then collapses on the ground, unable to breathe. Hope is about to kill him, and then the professor pushes her out of the way because he's been waiting for this kill for years. He reveals that Panman slept with his wife, and all of this was about vengeance. Panman is somehow able to jump out of his body and into the professor, and then they struggle for a little while internally, and then he goes back into Panman. We see the professor's true colors as he pushes Justice in the way as a meat shield. Panman then takes over Justice's body and punches the professor in the face. He then goes back into his body, gets up, wobbles around a little bit, and then turns around to just flip them both off and get out of there. This scene doesn't make any sense. I mean, he was incapacitated with the pesto. He had so much of it. How come his powers still work? Is this guy immortal? Is there any way to be able to kill him if he can keep body jumping from one place to another place? I don't know if there's any way for Panman to actually die. The professor then kidnaps Justice inside of his car and tells her the entire story.
He kills them because I taught them Dolodroff's secret recipe. It was Dolodroff's wish to take his poached salmon recipe, his masterpiece, to the grave with him. And it was me who broke into his house and stole it away from him. Revenge for what he stole from me.
Justin and the professor drive to the beach where they can meet Panman for the final showdown. Panman is armed with his trusty pot and the professor has his pesto and a knife. Justice runs between both of them and tries to stop the violence. She tries to free Jeremy from the demon by telling him he can fight it, and he's actually able to take off his pot. However, right when he does this, the professor throws a knife at Justice and he jumps in the way to save her. Panman needs his power again. He puts his pot on his head and he faces off against the professor. The professor throws his vial of pesto at the same time that Panman throws his pot lid. The pot lid impales the professor and the pesto forces Panman off a cliff. The professor is laying there dying, but Justice doesn't care. She runs down to be able to go and find Panman to see if he's okay. Panman, in huge danger, swaps bodies with this random guy on the beach. Jeremy dies, and the last thing that he hears is that Hope is actually dead. The new Panman gets into a car and then rolls up right beside Justice. He offers Justice a ride, and she just takes it. The last bit of the scene is a green glimmer inside of Panman's eyes, showing that he's not dead at all. This movie was a wild ride, and I enjoyed every single minute of it. By far, this is my favorite bad movie yet. If you haven't seen it already, I suggest you just check it out right now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks to everyone who stayed till the end. To end things off, I've added some of the weirdest lines from the movie.
Don't you remember the great demon sheep experiments of the early 80s? He'll be custard in our hands.